Before we get started, we'd like to thank EMC Bond for sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety. EMC Bond prioritizes personalized service in every aspect of their business. When you partner with them, you'll receive stable, responsive, and timely solutions rooted in strong relationships. To learn more about EMC Bond, their products, services, and personalized approach, visit emcinsurance.com/bond. Now, on to our show.
You're listening to Let's Get Surety. Let me hear your bonding talk with Kat Shamapande.
Hey everyone, it's Kat Shamapande. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Let's Get Surety. I am excited to have with me today my co-host, Mark McCallum, CEO of NASBP. Hey Mark, thanks for being on.
Absolutely. Hi, Kat. Looking forward to having a wonderful guest with us today.
So am I, and I'm excited that we're able to have another installment of our series, The Corner Office, Conversations with Surety Leaders. And to do that today, we have with us Ryan Springer, Vice President Bond at EMC Bond. Hey, Ryan, thanks for being on.
Hey, Kat. Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Well, Ryan, before we dive in and into this conversation, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you found your career in surety?
Well, sure. I saw all those movies about surety underwriting and all those things growing up, and I knew this was the career for me.
There's all those high-speed car chases, right?
That's exactly right there. No, like most people, surety found me a little bit. My path into the surety industry does have one little kind of interesting tweak to it, and it involves somebody winning the Powerball jackpot. It was not me, though. Wow. So I'm a lawyer by trade there, but I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, where EMC is headquartered, countrywide headquarters in Des Moines. So very familiar with EMC growing up. Went to Iowa State for undergrad, then did a year of law school at Iowa. And after that, my wife got a job in Kansas City. So I went down and did my last 2 years of law school at KU. And I was then a practicing attorney at a small firm in Kansas City for about 7 years. Wife and I had kiddo number 3 on the way. Grandparents all live in Des Moines still. And I got the message, time to move back home. So I had a friend who after college had worked at EMC in IT. Again, a great company based out of Des Moines. I was very familiar with it growing up. He called me one day and said, somebody in our legal counsel's office just won the Powerball jackpot, $115 million. We're sure he's going to quit. You should send a resume in before anybody else does. I said, absolutely. So I sent one in, and general counsel called me in at the time, and we interviewed and had a great interview for about an hour and a half. It must not have been as great as I thought, because at the end, he stopped it and said, do you know anything about surety bonds? And I said, I have no idea what those are. And he said, that's okay. I don't think anybody does until they start doing it. Turns out he was right about that. So he says, well, my wife does this thing called surety bond claims, and she's been living out of a suitcase for 6 months. Do you mind talking to her about a bond claims attorney position over there? I said, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So I came on in 2013 at EMC as the bond claims attorney. Then my predecessor, the head of claims there, retired in 2016, and I took over as head of claims for EMC Bond. And then my predecessor in this role as head of surety for EMC retired in the summer of 2022. So I've been in this role as head of surety for about 2 years now.
Well, that's great. So nobody should say you can't get lucky in surety, right?
That's right. I would have no idea what surety is still unless somebody won the Powerball. So I was the real winner that day,
That's right?
That is great. That is great. So tell us a little bit more about EMC Bond, if you would.
Yeah. Well, first, so EMC Insurance itself, I mean, the company's been around since 1911, over 113 years, headquartered in Des Moines, Iowa the whole time. They write commercial lines, P&C insurance, life insurance, and bonds. We have 17 branch offices spread throughout the country. EMC Bond, we have a local presence in 12 of those offices. We have a team of 48. This year, we should do about $50 million in written premium out there. We have been around. We wrote our first bond at EMC in 1940. We have had a standalone bond group since the mid-1950s. And since the mid-1950s, there's only been 4 leaders of that group that entire time, and I'm number 4. So over a period of 60, 70 years, we've only had 4 leaders. So one of the things we really preach to our team, and is that's part of our culture, is that stability that we bring to the table with our agents, with our accounts.
Oh, that's great. So how many different states do you write in?
So we write in all 50 states. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So not only stability, but continuity, it sounds like.
Stability, continuity. Yeah. So for our executive team, or what we call our corporate office team there, we average 28 years of service, all within EMC Bond. And I've only been there 11 years. So I'm actually bringing that number down quite a bit. So we've been lucky enough to have folks that have joined our team and really stuck with us for a long time and enjoyed that culture and enjoyed both growing those relationships with the agents and seeing accounts grow from when you write the first bond for them for 250,000, 100,000, and then 20 years later, you're writing $50 million, $60 million single bonds for them. And those are amazing stories to see.
Well, you just mentioned the culture there at EMC. That must really change. I mean, without a great culture, you're not going to be able to keep staff like that. That's pretty impressive. Can you talk a little bit about the culture there and how you're able to retain staff the way you do, even though you're the new guy in the block at 11 years?
It's a great question, and it's a very important piece of any organization, especially a surety organization right now, because there is a lot of instability and moving in the market. The attracting talent is very hard right now. Retaining talent is extremely hard. There's a lot of opportunities for folks to move. So how do you keep your best folks with you? Number one, you have a culture where everybody works together. What we like to say is that our culture is very flat. So there's no kind of field underwriting versus corporate underwriting. We're all working together on a daily basis. Nobody is ever concerned about calling me up and saying, Ryan, I think this is a bad idea. You should do this instead. And I'm happy to hear all those things too. So we have that very open dialogue, and that makes sure that everybody is very engaged in what we do. Everybody really cares about what the outcomes are going to be for our agents and accounts in there. And I think that engagement really helps kind of drive people wanting to stay because they know their contribution is very important each and every day. And then number two, especially for the new folks coming up in the industry, because we're lean, we're able to, at times even create new positions that take more benefit of their talents so they can continue to grow. Because we have that lean organization of only 48 people, we're not stratified so much that, well, you're here, you're on bond underwriter 1, and then you got to go to 2, then you got to go to 3, then this, then this, then this, and you might be blocked by someone that's around the same kind of time frame with the company there. We don't have that. We work to make sure all our team members have that growth potential and can continue to grow in their careers and really encourage those discussions throughout the organization as well.
I love that sense of flexibility and people orientation. I was curious. I know you're part of a larger mutual insurer. Can you tell us a little bit about what a mutual insurer is and how that might filter into your culture?
Yeah, so the biggest thing about a mutual insurer is really you're owned ultimately by your policyholders there. We don't have publicly traded stock out there. We're not so tied to our stock price that we might need to make a decision that's not necessarily in the best interest of our policyholders or in the best interest of the people on our teams throughout the country. And that really gives us more flexibility than you would have if you're watching the stock ticker every day and say, well, we're down 10 cents. We better cut staff or do something like that. It really, I think, does give you the opportunity to take a longer view on both growth and profitability and take advantage of some things that the day-to-day market might not reflect.
Right. Thank you. I wanted to touch, every surety, I think, views a certain sweet spot for themselves. Could you kind of tell us what you think is your identity and your sweet spot in the marketplace? Yeah,
it's a good question, Mark. And it's a question I get a lot. The last 2 years, I've been traveling around the country, talking to agents, talking to our accounts. And the question is always, what's your sweet spot? What do you look to write there? And a lot of times I say, we're looking at accounts. We have a single of 45, aggregate of 90, single of 70, aggregate of 150. And those are size ranges there. out there. But
Right.
I love picking up an account that's doing a 2/10 program just as much as I love picking up an account that's doing a 30/60 or a 50/120 or something like that. So bringing on good accounts and watching them grow is really beneficial. So we are what I would say is a standard market that can be creative. We don't do what I would call kind of checklist or template underwriting. We don't have a list of you need X, Y, and Z, or it's a no, and we're just going to say no. We want to work with, we want to partner with our agents and with those accounts. We want to listen to the story. Okay, the financials matter. The
Right.
money on the balance sheet matters, but there are times when the company is better than the balance sheet right now, and they're going to take those next steps. And you got to sit down with somebody, look them in the eye, talk to them to figure out where those next steps are going to be, what their plan is. And if you can listen to that, you can get a little bit beyond just the numbers on paper and pick up accounts that way that can grow into exceptional long-term accounts for both the agent and for EMC.
That's great. Maybe for lack of a better term, I almost view that as like a holistic underwriting approach, right? You want to see the bigger picture, the whole story.
Yep. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. You look at the 3 C's of underwriting and coming out of claims on that side, that character piece is a piece that is so important. And
Yep.
the best way to understand that is to sit down now with the person eye to eye and have a conversation with them. Now, there are times when you're going to pick up an account and there's just not time to have that initial meeting where you're sitting down breaking bread or at least in a Zoom talking to somebody. And that's where you can lean on these great NASBP agents that meet these people that are in the community that know them well, and you have that trust with your agent. And when they're vouching for someone's character like that, it means a lot on the surety side when you're looking beyond the numbers a little bit.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned about the agent with your company. Can you tell us a little bit more about the importance of that relationship between the agent and EMC?
The agency relationship is the most important relationship in surety out there, because you need to trust. You're taking it's a risk game out there with insurance, with surety. You're taking larger risks, having large penal sums out there. You need to trust the agent, and you build that trust over time. We certainly have agencies that we've been working with for 30, 40 years, but you can also find new. So one of the things we've done, Kat and Mark, here recently is we've grown in the last couple of years a considerable amount. We'll probably be up about 40% over where we were in 2022 by the end of this year. And one of the ways we've done that is to expand into some territories we had been a little bit reluctant to get into because of regulatory environments and things like that before. But we've been able to expand into those because we've targeted great NASBP agents that know the community, know the territory. And when they come to us with a potential account, we know that account is already well vetted out there. And that's different than working with your Main Street agent that's just dabbling in surety a little bit. Now, we'll work with those folks too and try to work with them and educate them. And with EMC, on the PNC side, we're writing with about 3,800 agents throughout the country. So you have your Main Street agents too, and there's good accounts, and we like to give them guidance as well. But especially when you're going into a new territory or writing maybe a new class of bonds or a specific contracting type that you might not have much experience with, those NSBP agents are invaluable out there.
Right. So it sounds like you're identifying opportunities for EMC, and that's really helped your growth story. Tell us a little bit more about some other opportunities that you see for EMC and surety in general out there.
Yeah, so for the surety market in general and EMC kind of being in the standard market, we do see a lot of in our market, really, we have a lot of opportunities still to grow in territories where we're underrepresented and making connections with new agents and things like that. So that's a lot of where our growth will come in the next 4 years, and exploring new opportunities in the commercial space and upgrades of technology. I will tell you, unlike a lot of sureties, our split on contract for commercial is very heavy contract. We are 90% contract, only 10% commercial. And our commercial writings right now are really more of the quick issue thing. And we're upgrading systems right now on the technology side to be more competitive in that realm. And we'll have those be able to roll out here soon. So that'll be a boost in a way we can service our agents better on that commercial side. On the contract side, new territories for EMC, but for the overall market, that infrastructure spending is big. And it's really, it's just starting to roll out. I mean, it's out there in the market, but there's at least another 24 months of that funding still coming out. So there is, and the timing for the industry as a whole and for contractors as a whole is great, because you've seen with interest rates going up, the private sector spending coming down a little bit, but public sector spending going up. And what we know is surety is a creature of statute at the end of the day. So public spending, you're going to need statutes. The new broadband initiatives, you want to have bonds on those as well. I lived in Iowa other than my 7 years down there in Kansas City my whole life. We have a lot of rural areas in Iowa that need those broadbands. So the way that's going to be very important. It's going to be a nice boost to contractors doing that utility work, and as well as sureties writing bonds on those, and great for the folks living out in those rural communities as well. So I think from an overall growth standpoint of what's out there in the market, we still are going to see that growth, even with the interest rates being where they are right now and pulling down the private sector spending a little bit. And also with those interest rates up, I'm sure some banks and some developers might be more likely to bond some private projects than they did in the past.
Right. So you mentioned broadband as a component of the overall infrastructure spending and grant making. Are you participating in anything in terms of EV infrastructure or wind or solar as well?
Yeah, we have a few contractors that are in those kind of target markets there. We've had a few in that EV space that were very, very successful building the EV charging stations. Those are going to just continue to come online. There's a few of those that were in the bond space and were requiring bonds and no longer are. So we'd love for them to require bonds more often on those projects. The wind space and the solar space are interesting. I had a conversation with an agent here a couple of weeks ago when I was out in Omaha. It really kind of a deep dive into the solar space. To some extent, sureties have been a little reluctant in the solar space due to efficiency guarantees that might last for 30 years. Now, my understanding is and we're looking for ways to figure out how those guarantees can remain in the contracts, but the sureties can write a product that's just more writable. Anything with a 30-year tail is very difficult to write from a surety's perspective. So we want to be able to support those contractors out there with a product that sureties can get behind as well.
So in those instances, do you see that as more of a need for the industry to get out front and educate obligees about that?
I do.
The limitation that poses.
Yeah, it's an independent discussion with the obligees, which our directors, our underwriters are great at having those conversations. Sometimes the industry as a whole would be benefited by kind of forefronting some of those concerns on the long tail guarantees. And here's what a surety bond can provide to you to get this built. And here's what it's not really designed to do. But those projects are just going to continue to come online. The wind, the solar, there's a lot of federal money to come into that as well. And those are products that we need and services that we need as a country moving forward. So certainly at EMC, we want to find a way to be able to assist contractors doing that work.
What's kind of also, I think, interesting in those spaces is the realization by federal and state agencies that the letter of credit environment may not be the be all and end all for security, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they're more accepting of the dialogue about surety bonds as part of a alternative security that can be applied in those situations. Are you hearing more about that?
Yeah, we are. I mean, I think especially following some of the uncertainty, we'll call it, in the banks about 18 months ago or so, obligees have been more open to the benefits of bonding out there. The one thing on the bond side, we always have to be cognizant of especially when it comes to letter of credit versus a bond. So are you replacing a letter of credit with a true financial guarantee bond, or is it more of a performance and payment bond? Because those two need to do two different things. If it's a true financial guarantee bond that really replaces a letter of credit and it's basically payable on demand, that's a real one-for-one swap there. But there are times when the bond's not following through necessarily on the financial guarantee the way it needs to. It just needs to be written the correct way on that. So at EMC, we don't do a ton of the financial guarantee. Really, it's not a market we're heavily in. It's certainly something we monitor out there. But that's one too where there are opportunities there as kind of that letter of credit replacement. But then there's opportunities where a letter of credit has been used in the past, but really what the obligee needs is more of that performance bond, that payment bond to guarantee the completion of the work out there. And that's when you'd swap it in a surety bond, a payment performance bond is a perfect fit there, and really a better fit than what a lock would be.
Right. And then a lot of times those obligees don't understand the pre-qualification benefit that they get with surety. So opportunity for us to be proactive in our educational efforts.
Yeah. Obviously, the theory behind surety is that we're going to do such a great job underwriting all these accounts. It's going to be a 0% loss ratio, and that's really is the service. A lot of times the obligee is paying for that pre-qualification. Now we all know it doesn't work perfectly in the outcomes of things, and there's always unknowns out there that happen. But the pre-qualification service and thinking about that and the overall surety market and how, because it is still a little known industry other than to the folks in it. The E&Y report that SFAA worked on and put out there, being in claims for 10 years. And we've stepped into so many claims over the years that started out as claims, but ultimately just led to the principal completing the contract on time. That's where the surety bond, that's extremely hard to quantify. I know there've been some efforts to do that, but there are so many times that surety steps in and plays more of a mediator role between the principal and the obligee in order to get everybody back on the same page, pushing to the end, get a project well and complete, no loss to the surety at the end of the day, principal's still up and running, still getting bonded, obligee gets a great project. And that's when you can kind of come in and play that mediator, and that can be very rewarding. And that's a piece of what surety bonds do that's hard to quantify, but it's very, very important, and I'm sure saves tenfold more projects a year than even sureties coming in and paying for a new contractor to complete that work.
Right. No, I love that. I love it, particularly I figure with your background, we'd be remiss not to talk about how you can avoid claims in the first instance. And I love that story. What are some of the other ways that EMC kind of on the front end tries to make sure that it never gets to a claim, or other proactive steps that you engage in?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Mark and Caddy, general underwriting, there is a lot to be said for a strong balance sheet to be able to push somebody through a tough project out there too. There's also, like we talked about before, there's a lot to be said for that character piece when that tough project is and you see the numbers and the profit fade and all of a sudden you're going to lose money. Are you going to kind of, turn and try to get out of it? Or are you going to push through? And are you going to get your agent engaged early, get your surety engaged early and say, I have a tough project right now. This is what it's going to do to our financials. Let's figure out a way to get this done and move on to more productive work versus getting in a big fight with everybody and going back and forth there.
It sounds like upfront communication is vitally important.
Communication in the surety industry is essential. Continuous communication. And that's not on the agent and the account. That's on the surety to be responsive, to have that communication, to be a consultative ear to the agent and the account out there. And in talking to agents just in the last 2 years, probably kind of since COVID and that, and some of this work from anywhere environment, which can be very beneficial at times. The one concern that's raised a lot is just that responsiveness. And what we really instill in our folks, and what's so important and so easy, pick up the phone. If it starts ringing, pick it up. Talk about it. If you miss a call somebody back 10 minutes later. Let's have that dialogue. Pushing off something, back from my law days, I know if you want to, pushing off something a few more days rather than having the conversation right then is not going to make anything better. If it's a tough conversation, have it. You got to be able to find a little bit of kind of comfort in that conflict out there too, because conflict really can, even if you and an agent might disagree, but let's have a discussion. Let's figure out if we can get to the bottom of it too, because there might be an account that EMC can't write. But fundamentally, our goal is, even if EMC can't write it, we want to ensure that our agent is able to pick up that account and run with that account and move forward, even if it's not going to be an EMC bond account. So we need to be able to put them in the best position to do that. And sometimes that means having questions, gathering a lot of information so they have it and talking to them over that. And sometimes it means being able to say no very quickly so they can start looking for other markets out there too.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned, Ryan, some of the trends that you're seeing in the industry as a whole. Are there any trends with your background in claims that you're seeing on the claims side specifically?
Yeah, so I think even just looking at the SFAA numbers here through the first quarter, I think the overall loss ratio is up over 23, which is pretty high on the surety side, especially when you think about what's a profitable loss ratio in surety there, which can range probably from about 25 to 40 or so, depending on expenses, things like that. So what I'm seeing out there right now in the market, and probably for the last 18 months, I wouldn't say that we've seen an increase in frequency across the market in claims, but severity was up. And that severity was up really because the claims that were going into default late 2022 throughout 2023 were generally projects that were bid and awarded maybe right in the start of 2020 or so, or middle 2020. And we all know what happened in 2020 through 2022, and that what it led to was supply chain issues and skyrocketing material prices. So that led to claims. So when somebody went in claims, it's not a typical surety performance claim where you would have thought in the past maybe about a 35% loss or so on the penal sum. All of a sudden, those losses are all penal sums. So because it's tenfold price increase on the material, so it's just going to have to be. And labor shortages too, it contributed to that. Now, I will say the silver lining of that pain for the industry and pain for the contractors really is the escalation clause that is in most subcontracts now, most general contracts. If that escalation clause, and what I tell our folks that ask me about it, keep that in your contract forever. That escalation clause is so important and will be so beneficial to subcontractors and GCs moving forward, because you never know when some boat is going to get stopped in the Panama Canal or something like that. And so it's going to cause another issue with supply chain. So escalation clauses could be a huge benefit for the industry moving forward. Right now, there's probably an uptick in claims in kind of that subcontractor space. And what I think is happening there a little bit, the large, call them the mega GCs, they played really nice. They were playing real nice with those subs during COVID and all that. And there weren't much options and they played real nice. I think there's some pent up aggression there is what I'm seeing. And there's been some beating up of subs lately, and and God bless them and their attorneys that they have on staff at the mega GCs. They know how to write a contract, and there are onerous provisions in there that put subs in a very tight spot with no compensation for acceleration and things like that. And what we tell our subs, you're going to have to work for these folks. And great project manager is a great project manager, whether that they're at a mega GC or a smaller GC, and they'll take care of their subs because they know they want those subs to work for them again. But you got to go in with your eyes open. You got to go in understanding the contract and knowing the notice provisions and things like that. And that's where we're able to hopefully bring some of that consultative approach, that assistance to our contractors, especially when they're maybe doing their first or second project with one of those mega GCs out there.
That's great, that consultative approach, as you mentioned, and what value you bring to your principals in that regard. Part of that is also, do you help them with kind of reputational information in terms of GCs and owners and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We do. I have a bank of the mega GC's contracts that I've gone through over the years. So no different clauses that could be an issue that stick out that have caused other people problems. And what I don't want to say is that working with a mega GC is bad. No, it's great. Those contractors build up this country and they do great work out there. It does matter. Your PM and your superintendent on there and how skilled they are to make sure everybody's on the same page. But it's work that we want our contractors to be on. We just want them to be on there with their eyes open.
Yeah.
So what one of the opportunities perhaps for the surety industry going forward is leveraging technology and trying to gain efficiencies in that regard. Mm-hmm. Is that something EMC is looking at very closely now?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We've been over the last probably 18 months, we've spent a lot of time talking about our current legacy technology and what the future is. And I will tell you, Mark and Kat, I am a believer in AI. I do believe artificial intelligence is a worldwide game changer moving forward. It's what the internet was in the early 90s and maybe more so going forward. Now it's still in its infancy, but it's growing quick. I do think there are going to be folks that try to tap into AI too quickly and turn away from the human element. And that's going to cause some issues for them and some pain moving forward. What I try to focus on is how it can be additive to our people. What can we do in the technology space that enhances what our team members can do? Never replaces the team members, but enhances what those team members can do. EMC Insurance, we've created a new tagline in the last year: keeping insurance human. It was count on EMC for about 2 decades. Right now it's keeping insurance human. And so we talk on our team, okay, what does it mean, keeping bonds human? And some of it means you have to bring that human element, right? That face-to-face meeting that we talked about before, seeing that character piece. And then also, and I can't take credit for this, it's my director out of Phoenix, Manny Conchola, came up with this, but we were talking about it, he's like, what it means to him is what AI can't bring, what systems can't bring into any situation, any underwriting, is empathy, understanding that side, those feelings, that emotion on both sides. What does it mean to an agent if you're going to get back to them 2 days later instead of an hour later? What does it mean to that account when they don't know until an hour before on bid day whether they can bid a project? So go into all those relationships with that empathy, with that number one focus on your mind. How do I make my product what I'm doing? And what our product is on the surety side is ourselves. We give them a piece of paper and a backup to the financial guarantee, but we're giving them our guidance, our support out there. So how can you be additive and always be thinking about, how do I put my agent, my account in the best position moving forward?
Yeah, I like that. Don't put technology over relationship. Use it for how it can improve but not replace. That's great.
And Ryan, I just, on a more personal note, before we let you go, I just wanted to ask one question. What do you find to be the most rewarding part of leading the bond department at EMC?
That's a great question, Kat, and hopefully you can hear it from the tone of my voice, but I very much enjoy what I do right now. I enjoyed it on the claim side. I enjoy it on this side as well. Surety is just a great career that I try to sing the praises of to folks that I meet out there too, because we need all the talent in the industry we can get. It's a great melding of financial, technical, legal skill along with that relationship skill. There's very few that kind of meld those together in such a rewarding way. So to answer directly what I enjoy the most about it, kind of two things on two different tracks. Number one, the people there. So right now I'm talking to you guys. I'm in a hotel room in Wisconsin because I'm visiting agents and accounts out in Wisconsin this week. And I'm going to enjoy those meetings because the people in the surety industry, the contractors, the agents, they're great folks. You can learn so much. These, in general, these are business owners we're working with. They're optimistic. They look at the world in a way where, how am I going to build the next thing? How am I going to grow something? And that's great to be a part of that. That's great for your own personal optimism about the world when you go out there. And it's an opportunity every time you sit down with one of these folks to learn something. If you're listening to what they're saying, you're going to be learning. And so that's probably my favorite thing about the job. My second favorite thing here, and maybe I have a bit of a competitive streak, and surety is an industry that has a scoreboard. And that scoreboard is your growth and your loss ratio. And guess what? You could have a great year, but that scoreboard is going to reset to zeros the next January 1, and you're going to get to try to do it again. And that can be very rewarding, and it can be tough sometimes when those numbers don't look great. But again, it's going to reset to zero. You're going to get after it and go try again, and that's a lot of fun. So yeah, our audience to this podcast, I'm sure, is all surety folks, but anybody that I get on the street that wants to talk about a career path, surety's a great one.
That's awesome. Ryan, we've learned a lot from you today. It's been great having you on. Hopefully we can get you back again as a guest sometime to talk to us a little bit more about surety.
All right. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Mark. Hopefully I'll be seeing you soon at one of these NASBP events.
You've been listening to Let's Get Surety, brought to you by the National Association of Surety Bond Producers. For more information about the NASBP and its members, visit nasbp.org.
Before we go, we just wanted to thank EMC Bond again for their generous support in sponsoring this episode of Let's Get Surety. EMC Bond prioritizes personalized service in every aspect of their business. When you partner with them, you'll receive stable, responsive, and timely solutions rooted in strong relationships. To learn more about EMC Bond, their products, services, and personalized approach, visit emcinsurance.com/bond.